Dr. Jeff Radford, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Anytime. You were telling me a moment ago about merciful leadership. Would you like to tell everybody about that and what exactly you do?
I would love to tell everybody about Merciful Leadership. So, back in 2007, I was trying to figure out how that I would finish my doctoral project and in the doctor's degree. And the thought came to me about as I worked through that program and studied about different theories of leadership, but also evaluated leaders that I have worked for. In addition, the type of leader that I was, and this term merciful leadership came into my mind. And really, I'll tell you the secret sauce to anything is about forgiveness in the workplace. And when you read about other leadership theories, you don't hear a lot about forgiveness when you're interacting with other team members or employees or those that you serve. But the whole component of forgiveness is really valuing the team members that we serve. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about merciful leadership, how it was developed, but really, what I have often said is that we're not just in the business, we're in the people business. And without people and without serving people and without people working with us, leaders would not be successful. So we have to value people within the workplace.
How do you balance forgiving people and achieving results?
Sure. Well, by valuing people, which is forgiveness, and if you go to my book Mercy Leader, we talk about that a lot because there's different components of merciful leadership. When I talk about forgiveness, forgiveness doesn't take away accountability or expressing the results, but most people like structure. They long for some type of structure. So that's the results piece of it. I give my expectations, I set where those expectations are. But if I don't value people and bring them along with me to help meet those expectations, or maybe I disregard them as a person and what they need, the resources they need, they'll never fulfill those. And so to achieve results, you have to value people. You have to put yourself in their shoes. What do they need? If they're failing, is it because of something as a leader I'm not providing or the organization is not providing? And when we're actually collaborating together and allowing a workplace to actually flourish because I've got creators on the other end who are giving me ideas, who are expressing how maybe even my own decisions are impacting the workplace through a positive light or even through a negative light. I welcome that feedback because we're collaborating together. They're the ones most of the time doing the hard work. And so I need to listen to that and show them that they are important in that process. Whether as you're used to, we had the old factory style of leadership to where in my book, I talk about the gentleman would look down through the window and look at all the people working below and have a thumb down approach. Well, that's not what we work in these days. We work in environments where people want to be part of the process. They want to be feel part of the movement. They want to achieve the results, but we just have to give them all the tools and the feedback to help them with that. Whether it's positive or even constructive criticism, it's our job as leaders to give them that.
Definitely. When you talk about people having what they need, does that go beyond information and perhaps resources in the organization to find some sort of flexibility in a way that still reaches goals?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, by the way. It reminds me of my studies several years ago, where a gentleman by the name of George Barna came to speak to us at the university, and he talked about the generational differences that we have. I think in the older generations, probably that factory style approach, you could get by with it in some aspects. But we don't just serve that older generation anymore. We have a multi generational workforce. And when we think about that, we have to individualize our leadership to each level. And what George Barna talked about, he said the younger generations are more like a mosaic painting. And I'll be honest with you, if I go to an art exhibit and I see colors splashed on a canvas, I can't really interpret that. I just see colors splashed on the canvas. But what he talked about is if you look at the art, there's always different interpretations about that art. And meaning that when we have this multi generational workforce, this mosaic generational workforce, we really have to look at how we can serve each individual level. And so bringing that back into the leadership context, we really have to go through that process and actually figure out how we can individually connect with each level of generations that we are working with. And from that, we've got to figure out what's important to them as well. It's not just about what they're going to do for the organization anymore. It's really about they're coming in to see what the organization is going to do for them. So it takes a little extra effort, a little extra time, but the results and the value that it brings in the workforce really will take results to a whole nother level.
That's what I was going to ask about results, because I can relate to how people need different things based on their diversity. I can relate to that so much, but there will be business leaders or even any organizational leaders asking, yes, but what is the ROI on doing this?
Well, there's a lot of ROI. I mean, I think, if you focus on the culture, people will want to stay in the organization. So think about what we pay for when we hire a brand new team member or employee to our organization. We go through all the pre employment things that cost the organization money. We go through all the onboarding. It could take 90 days. It could take even longer than that, depending upon the type of role in the organization. And then when we fail during that experience and that position turns over, we acquire that expense again and go back through the same old routine of trying to hire somebody else. We've got to learn that we, again, are in the people business. And it's really important that we create the best experiences for our team members through feedback, but also through their experience. And so, what does that mean? Sometimes it's the small things. In one of the organizations I used to be CEO for, it was having their name on a name plaque when they came in for their first day of orientation. It was asking the questions prior to orientation, what's your favorite candy? And people are like, well, that's just too fluffy. It's actually personalized. And when they came into the orientation, they would have their favorite candy laying with their name plaque where they're supposed to be. And it was a wow factor when they first came in. It was having an employee advocacy program to where leadership members followed them, maybe not even their own supervisor, but somebody from the team would follow them in that, at least that first 90 days and make sure at a weekly check in that they were following up to see how their experience was, not just throwing them out to the wolves and expecting them to learn because that's not valuing their experience. That's just throwing them out there. And then ultimately, they will choose to leave or fail. So, when I think about the return on investment, that first category of employee retention is huge for any organization. And it's important to any organization as well, because when I spend time with hospitals or whoever I may serve, we are always looking at the retention strategies for team members. And so we know that there is a huge cost associated with that. And there's less cost when you retain those employees. So that makes sense. We want to make sure that they're staying with us, but it's all going to be about the culture that we have, the positive culture that they are hopefully thriving in for our hospital. So that's an ROI. The other thing that I would add to the ROI as well is that when team members are allowed to be in what I would call a psychologically safe environment, to where they can express their ideas, to where they can raise their hand when they see something wrong, then that also creates a component that saves cost. Because I would much rather somebody say, this is wrong and we can fix it, than to have a culture that's a top down approach where nobody's creative, giving better ways to do it, making more efficient ways to do it to save cost. But also, the creativity that they bring can actually enhance the results by the products that we produce or the patient care that we provide, the quality of care that we provide in healthcare. So that would be another ROI, because I think there are better results when we allow a psychologically safe environment, which is all conducive to what I do as a leader and actually the culture they work in.
You answered one of the questions I was going to ask, which is how taking this approach can prevent things like burnout and mistakes in people's work as well.
Yeah,
Do you
no,
think so?
that's yeah, and I'll tell you, I work in healthcare. I've been in healthcare for over 30 years. Since the age of 17, I was riding a bicycle to the local rescue squad building as an emergency medical technician. That's how I got started in the healthcare. And from that, I've seen many things, but the most impactful thing that hit the healthcare world, it hit every industry, but I can speak specifically to healthcare, was COVID. And in the COVID, I saw a lot of things that were related to fear, lack of supplies, uh, answers that people were hungry for because they were scared in that type of environment. And from that, I saw burnout because we had an influx of patients that came into the system and we were not ready for it from an entire demand on the healthcare system. From that, I did see burnout. I saw people who decided maybe to leave for a period of time, leave healthcare because it was just too much from what they had to experience during that time. Or other leaders have retired or gotten out of it because of the stress that it created. So when we work in an environment where people feel valued, there will be less burnout. It'll be more collaborative as a team versus a silo effect that often occurs in organizations where nobody's allowed to talk to each other, or an organization that promotes blame to different departments without taking accountability. It takes open communication, nurturing, and showing people that they're valued that actually lessens the opportunity for burnout versus people who feel like they're in a silo, working by themselves, don't have a voice, and then they just decide to leave.
That is spot on. I have seen that happening in similar sectors like education and disability over here. So we can see those trends that you have identified and the trends that you have led to solve. We're seeing that in multiple countries. This is not just in the US, it's not only in Australia. But I'm really keen to ask this controversial question. How can we figure out the burnout of leaders?
Well, I think we could actually gauge it just by well, it could be interaction. Number one, verbal cues, comments that are made, actions, gestures that come from the leader. You can often pick up when you observe verbal cues from someone. I think sometimes results are indicative to burnout. So somebody becomes less engaged as a leader, they're not involved with their team. Their turnover spikes up. Quality starts to go down. And you often ask, where's the leader in all this? And the leader could be checked out in the office and done and not really wanting to express it. But that could be indicative of the results are not where they need to be. And it could be obviously an example of the leader in burnout. It could be direct follow up with the leader. So, in the people that I serve, leadership teams that we serve, we stay connected pretty frequently, and I look for cues that I may see of whether it's enhanced complaints. Complaints are more, or somebody's dissatisfied all the time. So those negative things that I would see and pick up on, so I could address them and say, "Hey, what's going on with you? I see something a little bit different in you." I actually have if you're okay, I have an example of that in my own career. Would it be okay to share with the group?
Course, examples are great. You can share anything.
Sure. So when I was first joined my current organization, I was about a year into a chief nursing officer role, and I was working hard. We had a lot of call-ins from staff, and so I became the nurse on the floor. I was the leader, but I was working side by side with my staff. I was taking care of patients and not just, administrative role, but I was also doing nursing duties. And I was doing that for several days in a row. And I didn't realize there was anything different about me other than that I was committed, I was working hard, I was ensuring that our patients were safe. But my supervisor recognized that there was a change in how I interacted with her. And it was interesting because I didn't see it in myself, but she picked up on it because we were close. We talked frequently, we communicated frequently, and she saw some difference in how I was responding to her. So one day she called me into her office, and I'm busy, I'm taking care of patients. I'm like, what does she want? And so I go into her office and we sit down, and she said, "What's going on with you? I see something different in you. I see that you're interacting differently with the other members of the leadership team. You're interacting differently with me. When I talk about things you're passionate about, I see a light come in your eyes, or basically in your verbal cues." And then she said, "But when I talk about things related to the hospital, I see a change in your demeanor. What's going on with you?" And I still could not take ownership of that because I didn't see it within myself, although she did. And so she told me to go home and think about it and decide if I truly wanted to be the chief nursing officer. It kind of hurt my feelings, to be honest with you, because I was like, I know I'm working very hard. I'm taking care of patients. I'm ensuring they're safe. And I thought about it through the weekend, and I came back on Monday with a renewed energy. And I told her, I'm committed to be your chief nursing officer. And we worked very successfully together, and we created a great hospital environment during that time that we worked together. So even though I didn't see it myself, I had a great mentor, people who were surrounded around me that cared enough about me to say, I see something different. And I think that's the level of engagement we as leaders have to have. And whether if you're in a 5,000 employee organization, I know that the CEO or whoever the senior leader is doesn't know all 5,000 employees, but it spreads out because we're the example. And so if I'm taking care of my core team and I'm engaged with them and I'm watching them and I'm communicating with them, it trickles as they're leaders of a core team. And it goes on down to the frontline employees. So that would be an example of something that I experienced in my career, to where I had great people around me that recognized that I was going through possibly a burnout phase.
You had someone within the management of your organization who could identify how you were really coping, and
Yes.
then you were able to find that motivation and spark again. I'm curious about, okay, I'll focus on this next question. What would you say to people who still love their role, but they know that something needs to change in how the work is done? How perhaps there's a limit in resources to the point where people are stretched too far, like what you were describing, or perhaps there's a cultural issue. It could be gossip or anything. What do you say to people who love the work, but they know that something needs to change?
I would encourage you to find your voice. I think the worst thing that we can do is work in an environment we're passionate about our work, but we're not satisfied with the actual environment we're working in, and we're not using our voice to speak that. We're all given a voice, and I feel comfortable in the organization I work in, and I try to encourage that with people on my team. Is that I want feedback. I want to know what's going on. I want communication, but I will also voice the same thing to the person that I report to as well. If there's something I don't agree with or I have concerns, I'm going to report that, because that's the environment that we should work in. If there's concerns about that environment and you feel like you know that you have a voice, but the environment or the supervisor or the leadership team is not conducive to allow that, I think you have to I think you have to evaluate, is that the right area to be in? Because ultimately it will lead to your own demise in regards to your mental health, your psychological safety, your ability to achieve results, your ability to work at the level that you want to. So you have to evaluate that. But I would also encourage to make sure that you try to find the avenues to express. So if your current supervisor is not one that allows that environment, what's the next level that you can go to help create change in the organization if it's truly where you want to be? But important to also recognize that as leaders, we have to encourage that as well. So I don't want to be that person to where somebody who I serve will not speak up because they don't feel like they can come to me. So I think we have to evaluate it on both sides. But I would encourage that you find your voice and use it, as long as it's for the right perspective and it's constructive to help make the organization better.
Absolutely. Find your voice. That's very encouraging because people need to find the courage to repeat that word a bit, because we talk about confidence, but there's projecting confidence, talking how we are right now, and then there's actually feeling brave. There's the approach of actually finding that courage within to say, okay, my perspective on this matters. And I think that everybody needs to feel empowered. You are doing something very impactful here because, especially whether someone is at the top or not, we're all scared of what people will think of us when we say what we need.
And I have felt the same way. So I think by putting myself or remembering some of those thoughts that I have, but I would call that. So interesting enough, there's a book out there called Outwitting the Devil, and it's written by Napoleon Hill. And years ago, Napoleon Hill in the early 1900s or mid 1900s, he had written this manuscript and was afraid to actually publish it. And it was actually published after his death, What he talks about is he talks about the imposter syndrome that many of us go through. And when I talk about that for myself, I call it the other Jeff. And the other Jeff sometimes can be concerned about expressing his voice, about letting things of concern be known because I think about, well, what will others think? Or how will it impact my job? How will it impact my productivity or what people think about me? But again, I would ask that we reevaluate the intention of it because we can respond in an emotional response as a trigger point to where it's not constructive at all. But I'm learning as I get older and get wiser and longer in my leadership career that if I just take a step back and I pause and I look at the situation and I evaluate it and I say how can my voice make a difference in this area versus automatically reacting or coming from a place of fear to where I shut down because I'm afraid, or maybe I'm not deserving to be able to say anything. That other Jeff, I got to deal with him all the time, and I've just got to push him out of the way because I have been put on this earth, and everybody has with a purpose, and it's a purpose to make a difference. Whatever your passion is, and whatever your dream and your why, you are created for a purpose. And once I tapped into that, I found it a little bit easier to get that other Jeff off to the side and know that I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to have a voice and I'm going to make it be heard and hopefully help impact other people in a positive way.
If you don't mind me sharing, I think you have identified something that I was dealing with very recently.
Sure.
I love talking, and I had to overcome the various lines that I'd heard from people over the years. It's not always just the voice in our head. People will say, you had things handed to you when it's not true. People will say, you're becoming too much like someone else, or you can't fit this mold, or people call someone lazy when they are not. And people are going to have their opinions. But what you're saying is that we have our purpose anyway. And whether it's an opinion from within or from other people, we know our purpose and our voice. You've really hinted at spirituality or religion or philosophy a few times here. And I am not afraid to look at that because I think traditionally in business, in work, we were told to keep that separate. But I think that great leaders like you have been fueled by the philosophical purpose. So I'm curious, how were your beliefs changing what you do?
Yeah, that's great. So I was raised in a pastor's home. My dad was a pastor of a church. I'm currently, and I won't call it my side job. It's a calling. I currently am an assistant pastor of a church. So I have strong faith in God, and I believe that God is a designer of us, and He gives us, each one of us, a unique, individualized plan and purpose for us to achieve while we're here on earth. And where it saddens me deeply is I see people that have such potential, but yet they are almost like robots on a daily basis to where they do not go towards that potential, or maybe they've just given up. And I have been that guy. Whether I've pursued a purpose where I think God has given me vision, which would be merciful leadership and leadership development, because our podcast, because I get jazzed up when I'm able to tell my story. But when I think about times where people have said things about me, or maybe I feel like that I've invested in something and I've been done wrong. I've decided to lay it aside and just become my robot self and work, provide for my family, go to bed, wake up and do it all over again. But I finally reached a kind of a switching point in my life over the last few years. I've seen it develop over time where I've engrossed myself not only into God's plan for my life to achieve that, because I don't want to disappoint on that end. I don't want, I want to fulfill what that purpose is. But I've also surrounded myself with appropriate resources that have encouraged me, whether it's through people who are like-minded, people that give me good feedback of, hey, I see where you're going with this. Maybe you should try this. Or I've actually created more of my own sacrifices to say, I'm going after this 110%. I'm going to go all in. I have found myself, my mindset to evolve over time in my spirituality to where I want to fulfill that plan. And I never want to look back as I get over and say, I wish I had have done this. And when I do that, that's going to be a disappointment to myself. And I don't want to disappoint God, my family, or myself. And so, doing things just like today, where you've given me the opportunity to share my story, I'm going to take that opportunity and I'm going to go 110% and hopefully encourage other people, because I think that's what my passion and purpose is to give my story and say, I've been there before. I've been that guy that's laid that aside, that's given up at points and times in his life just because it got hard or it was uncomfortable or somebody said something or somebody wrote a negative comment on social media. But really, what I'm really going after, if I can impact one life, then I know that I'm fulfilling that purpose I've been given. And you can see behind me, and I do this strategically, a lot of people don't know this, but behind me, I have globes that are world globes that are behind me. And you today have given me an opportunity to speak to someone in Australia. And I don't know where your audience spans with, but that's my goal back here. And that is to change the world with the message of hope in the message of merciful leadership, and to say we've got to get back to making sure people feel valued, because there are too many workplaces out there that treat people as their employee number, or that just treat people bad in general. Take it out of the business context. That we see so much negative in our world, but I still believe that there are good people with good intentions that have a purpose to fulfill. And I'm on a mission to help change the world. You see them behind me, and I'm encouraging people as I go through that process. That's my why.
That was worded so perfectly, and that is the most enthusiastic talk I have ever seen on the show. I know it
Thank
has
you.
only been around for a few months, but out of more than 40 guests, that was the most enthusiasm. We went in a few directions that I wanted to look at more here. Guiding people beyond work. I'm curious about that because you talked about valuing everybody, and I think the whole world is becoming a bit politically interesting at the moment. How do you think we can all see the humanity in everybody regardless of their perspectives?
Yeah. Can I tell you, I'm still working on me in that area. I think we probably can easily go to this judgmental type mindset to where if we see somebody in need, we're automatically, well, there's plenty of jobs around. Why are they in need? There's jobs around. I've been that guy. I still have to fight that guy at points in times. But I think what I have to do more importantly is remember, and I'll go back to the spiritual relationship that I have, if that's okay. Remember that there's a God who overlooks my own failures, because I fail as a person. I'm not perfect by any means. I have had a judgmental type, lens at times that I've looked down on people, and that's not the right thing to do. So I have to remember that, how can I extend the same love that I've been given, the same grace, the same mercy, which I talk about in the workplace, that I've been given, and see the impact of that. And when you do that, and people are in the right intentions of the receiver, the other side, you see the impact. So outside the workplace, charitable events where, my family, and this is not bragging by any means, but my family has helped another family at Christmas time. And to see the eyes of the children light up when you give them a bicycle and presents because they wouldn't have had anything for Christmas, that's what I'm talking about. There are good people that are going through hard times, and they just need to have some kindness extended to them during the hard times, or evaluate it further. Ask open-ended questions to say, kind of tell me further what's going on, versus being judgmental and shutting it off. And there are going to be people out there that are taking advantage of others. I've seen it happen in the world, but I go back to say there's still good people out there. And I've seen it in all my travels, whether through work or through traveling on vacation. I see good people, and that gives me hope in humanity. And it's my purpose, my job, my calling is to be a good part of that and not be the negative end of that. So, looking for ways to serve, looking for ways to give back, I think is so important so we can extend kindness and continue it throughout the world.
Yes, for sure. And you said that you work at a church and you also work in another organization. You work in nursing, and I'm wondering what inspired you to do both. And I'm hoping you could inspire more people to work in corporate or some sort of other organizations, but also serve community because I saw in Australia, at least, that a lot of people just want to do jobs and they're not really looking so often at how they can also lead communities to bring people together. How do you think both of those cross over?
Yeah, so that's great, and I reference Napoleon Hill again because I think he's such an interesting individual. And when you read his work, he talks about charity and charitable givings, and that a lot of successful people, that's one of the keys, is that they continue to give, and all of a sudden it's given back. It's given back to them, and maybe an increase. And there's a scripture that talks about that. It actually in the Bible it talks about giving to other people, and you'll receive back. The intention is not to give back. The intention is when you take your focus on yourself out of the way and just focus on other people, you'll be amazed at what comes back your way. So it's with the right intention that we give back. And so when I think about how I first got into healthcare, I truly got into healthcare because my dad was in it. My dad was an emergency medical technician in the rescue squad. He was a pastor, and I wanted to spend more time with him. So I joined selfishly to spend more time with my dad. Over time, though, I realized that my nature was to take care of people. And whether it was through an ambulance service, in the back of an ambulance, taking care of emergency calls, or the decision to expand that by going to nursing school. And I found that my path, my doors just opened. It's really strange, but that's just my story. That although I had these career aspirations, and that may have been selfish aspirations at the time, doors opened when they needed to open for me during my career. And I had to be willing to say yes to walk through those. And I found myself going from the bedside to the boardroom. It was a natural progression that I walked from nursing into my first leadership role, which was managing an orthopedic practice of about 14 employees. I didn't know what I was doing. I had 14 employees who relied on me. And back in those days, we hand wrote the paychecks. It was really an antiquated type system. But as I worked through that, I started to realize that the words I said, people hung on to. Every interaction I had, they were looking at me. Every way I behaved, they were looking at me. I should have known that as a preacher's kid because that was the same thing when I was in the church. People would always look at the preacher's kid and see how he was acting. But I found that in leadership. But I also found that when those doors opened, it wasn't about the title anymore. My perspective shifted. It was about what could I use that role to make the biggest impact? The way that I communicate, the way I influence, the way I interact, the way I get to know people. How can I help them grow? What can I do in my role to help them get to the next level? How can I take my role now or social media, which is what I'm doing a lot these days, to help encourage people now? And if your heart and mind and goal is to truly fulfill your passion and help other people, that energy is going to transpire into what you do each and every day. So I would encourage people is don't give up on your dream. Don't give up on your passion, no matter how hard it is. And there are some days where I post a video and I may have 10 views. But do you know what I do the next day? I post another video because I had 10 views. 10 people watched that. That's important to me. I want thousands of people to watch it, but 10 people still watched it. So I'm going to keep putting out content because I'm going into my drive, my why. So don't give up no matter the obstacles, no matter the blood, the sweat, the tears, how hard it is, the naysayers. If it's truly what you're called to do, go all in and quit messing with your other self, that imposter, because I'm an example sitting here that the doors have opened for me. And now I'm in a regional role where I support 12 hospitals. But I used to be a 17-year-old kid riding a 10-speed bicycle to the local rescue squad. I've been very blessed in my life, and I don't take that for granted.
That is very, very motivational. And I was going to ask all sorts of administrative questions, but to ride this wave for a moment of doing what we are designed to do, I'm very keen to ask you, after you worked in areas where family had also worked, I'm so keen to ask. There'll be people out there whose family did any sort of work. It could be anything. And then they are wondering, do I want to do the thing that family did? And I've seen that occasionally on the show. Some other guests ended up in that situation. And I'm wondering, did you have any learning curves of trying to find your own approach to the same industry, or figuring out, okay, figuring out it is really what you want to do and not just what the other generations did? How did you relate to all of that?
Yeah, I would use extreme caution that you're not family called. And families may not appreciate that answer, but I think you have to figure out things for yourself for sure. There's a point in time in our life where we have to become independent and we have to be independent thinkers and figure out what really and you'll figure this out. There for instance, not everybody enjoys health. That's a fact. If it was, we wouldn't have a nursing shortage. But not everybody enjoys healthcare. Not everybody enjoys manufacturing. Not everybody enjoys being a lawyer. Those type of things. And so, if mom and dad and family say, "Come on in, this is what you're supposed to do," find your own voice. Let's go back to that. Find your own voice because if you get up every morning and you dread going into that, I would suggest that that may not be where you need to be. My daughter is a great example of that. I was so excited that she got accepted into a university, into a nursing program, check mark. And then she also got accepted into the honors program into leadership, check mark. Like I was like, yes, my daughter's following into my footsteps. Until a few months later, she called me and she said, Dad, I don't want to be in nursing. And you know what I said to her? Not, hey, you need to just hold out and you need to keep on because this is where you're going to be, job security, etc. I told her, get out and get out fast. Because if it's not something that she's passionate about, she will be miserable her entire life. And what's more important, living our life or letting life live us? I
Yes,
want your viewers, I want people to think about that. Are you going to live and be in control of your life? Are you going to let life be in control of you? I choose to be in control of my life because I know what excites me and what I love to do. And I love to do leadership development, what I'm doing now. So I told my daughter, I said, get out. So then she goes into a sociology program and she stays in that for just a little while. And she calls my wife and I and she said, Dad, Mom, I don't want to be in this. I said, get out, get out of there. And she went and she pursued her dream through a national college that's recognized in the field of music. And she got a degree in songwriting. And people will say, well, how's she going to make a living on that? I asked the same question. But what do I see while she's employed? She's taking care of herself. What do I see in her face and her actions? I see somebody that loves what she's doing and she's writing words that make a difference to other people. And so that was her passion, her calling. I could have said, go in my footsteps, but she would have been miserable the rest of her life. You have to find where you feel comfortable, where you're passionate about, despite the income. Now, you have to take care of yourself, and I'm all about that, but you have to be passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to be that robot who was programmed as a kid, and you're going to just be miserable the rest of your life and not productive in the way you were designed to be. That's just how I feel about it.
definitely. Have you seen in the medical world in particular, have you seen that some workers have better results and create more value because they feel passionate about helping people? And yes, that's clear in your journey, but beyond that, I'm hoping that you can share more stories of how when people really care and when it feels like they're calling to make a difference, then it can actually help the health of patients or the customers of whichever industry.
It's extremely palpable when a nurse walks into a room A patient can sense and pick up if they're there for the right reason or not. And here's what I mean by that. I've had several employees, team members, I prefer to call them team members. I've had team members go into a room and a patient will send me a note, send me an email, write a letter, write a compliment to talk about the personality of that nurse, always going above and beyond, and then you immediately know they're doing the right thing for the right reason and not just for the paycheck. I always have said to my staff, the paycheck is a benefit of what we do. All of us need the paycheck. We need to live and survive and take care of ourselves. But the benefit of what we do is the paycheck, not the reason. We should be doing what we're supposed to do because it's exactly where we need to be. And you can see that. You can see the results in a hospital and the quality data that comes out, the retention, people who've been there a long time, all those type of things come together when people are in the right place and you've picked the right people that went into the profession because that's what they're supposed to be doing. You can easily walk by somebody and it's palpable when they're there for the wrong reason. It is so much all over their face. They're disgruntled all the time, complaining all the time, and they just are miserable in what they're doing. It's very, very palpable. And it comes across. It comes across from their hands to the patient because the patient can easily and family perceive who's in there. And I've been on the other side. I've been on the other side as a patient. My family's been on the other side of a patient, and you can pick them out easily, the people that are loving what they do. You can go to Walmart here in the United States and pick out if the cashier loves their job or not. I have purposely said, because somebody has a frown on their face, how are you doing today? And it was the biggest mistake, or one of them in my life, because
Why?
they're going to tell you and they are looking at the clock of when they're going to get out of here, right? Or there's a guy in my local Walmart, his name is Jason. And why do I know his name? Because Jason loves what he does. And when I see Jason, when I go into Walmart, my wife and I, go through his line because we just like talking to Jason. We need more Jasons out there. People who are in it for the right reason, whether it's in factory or retail or healthcare, that are in it for the right reason because it is very palpable among the customers or patients or families.
Definitely. I would love to tell you about my friend Kate.
Yes.
My friend Kate, months ago, she was becoming the face of some local brands in very localized ways. But she made the time to sit down for a coffee with me when I wasn't feeling all right. And then months later, she switched to become a mental health worker, just working directly with people. And she realized she just wants to do that with anyone all day. And that really taught me something, and I hope that more people might do that, where it's not always about doing the most glamorous job, because if someone really cares about people, then they might want to be checking on individuals to check, are they okay? Because someone needs to be doing that. And I saw that some some locals are finding the people who are passionate about it. And it seems like you saw that even in the Walmart. I'm curious, do you know what motivates Jason to love doing that work?
I do not, but I have been drawn to him because even if he's pushing buggies, carts out in the parking lot, I've been drawn just to say hi to him, to just, or if I'm not in his line, which I try to get in his line, but if I walk by and I see him, I say hello because I can just tell. He asked how you are doing. He as he's putting the barcodes across the scanner of the products, he's talking to you, he's engaging the customer. He's been there for many years. His service, his tenure is very long at this specific store, and he's just genuinely a nice person. And when you go through his aisle, if he asks you how you're doing, you know he means it. You can feel it. And so you have a good conversation, which makes your experience a better experience at the store. If you go through someone who's very negative and is talking down the entire time, you just can't wait to get out of there. You're right. you've not had the best experience at all. So I like the Jasons. I'm drawn to Jasons like that, or people in healthcare specifically, where I've seen bad experiences with patients, and I've seen good experiences with patients. And the good experiences come from the caregivers who truly are passionate about providing great care and doing the right thing all the time. That's what they, and when something goes wrong, they're immediately transparent about it, and they're part of the solution to fix the issue so it doesn't happen again. Whereas other people can just disregard it. I mean, you think about people who see trash in the hallway of a hospital. That's not a good thing for families and patients to see, a dirty hospital, right? The people who own it are the people that will bend over and pick up the trash. And that seems simplistic, but that's an example. It's not even necessarily their role, but it becomes their accountability and ownership because they own the job, they own the environment, and they want it to be as best as it can.
Guessing you are saying that lives can actually be saved in some ways when people are nurturing the environment and the people over there to make sure that people are okay because you are dealing with people's health.
Correct. That was so evident in COVID. So I'll go back to that experience. We had so many very, very ill patients. And there were some that I was concerned about. I was a CEO at the time, so I was not a nurse at the bedside. I was a CEO of the hospital. But I would go into their rooms and just try to land an encouraging word. You can do this. You can make it. It will get better. And even when the doctors maybe had some doubts, it was that you can do this. I'm visiting with you. You can get better. And my staff, not just me, but a lot of my staff members doing the same thing, just encouraging, creating a healing environment. A lot of the mindset, like mindset is so important even when you're ill because you don't necessarily have the energy. You have doubts. You wonder if you're going to make it. And even we call it the man code, right? When men get colds, people say you got a man code because we're always, oh, I feel so bad, I can't make it. But a lot of it's the mindset, it's the things we allow in there because we can overcome just sometimes through our mind and surrounding ourselves with great caregivers who come in and push us and encourage us and tell us they've seen this before. And you say, okay, yeah, it's not just me. Then this has happened to somebody else, and they've seen them go out there and walk. We brought former patients in to visit patients to show that this person was just as sick as you were, and they went out and now they're working again. So we did, things like that to encourage people. And one of my favorite stories happened during that time where there was a younger patient, without going into great detail, that had COVID and was very, very ill. And two or three times it was thought that he may not make it. And just this year, this is after COVID, he's progressed, he's gotten better. Just this year, just a few weeks ago, actually, I attended his wedding, and he is driving again. He's married, and he has survived, and he's done such a great job. But I remember his mindset during that time where he just didn't know if he was going to make it, but we all rallied around him. He had a great family support unit, and now he just got married just a few weeks ago. So that's an example where it's so important in the healthcare world that we encourage each other and really try to nurture our patients and take care of them because it gives them an ounce of hope. And we should always give hope when hope is allowed.
We are seeing the power of belief and hope.
Yes.
This is a significant lesson from you because you are clearly quite a speaker and you work with religious beliefs and religious hope. But in your work, within a work context, you have seen that people can revive and heal. They are hanging on. I'm curious, what do you think it is? Is it that they have more willpower? Is it that they are perhaps trying to do more to heal, or just also that perhaps they are relaxed? People talk about the nervous system these days. Do you think there are all sorts of factors or also something spiritual, whatever anyone might believe in, that's guiding people to simply heal more when they have more hope?
I think it's a multitude of things, transparently. But I will say that some of the most strongest components I have seen is the person's faith, And the person lacks faith, the faith of those around him or her who's encouraging is like, you just take one more step. You got to go. Right. And it's people lifting their arms up when they don't even feel like lifting their arms up, because there are times where we just don't feel like it. But that's when our network of people kicks in and gets us over the hump. Right. And I think that's so important to consider. So when I'm not my best self, I've got great people I've surrounded myself with that are the encouragers that help me get over the hump. And that's in any setting, our own lives, our personal lives. That's hugely important about the people that we surround ourselves with. That's very, very important. I do think faith and spirituality is important. I've seen it. I've seen miracles happen. I've been part of miracles, even a mission trip to Honduras. I've been part of a miracle to where I know without even thinking that God is real, and I experienced a miracle on a mission trip to Honduras. So I've seen that from a faith perspective. People who have faith and pray and believe in a higher power to get them through. And so they remove themselves out of the woe is me, the victim mentality, and they rely on a higher power to get them through. I've seen the importance of that. I've seen the importance of prayer, of unity, of people unifying around someone, whether it's within the patient's room or across the world, where people are sending emails and Facebook messages, etc. I'm praying for you. That gives hope. That gives encouragement, because you've got a network of people that expand out from your small network that are encouraging and saying, I'm thinking about you today. I've seen that. I've seen little simple acts of kindness to where a gentleman that we had that had such breathing problems, and we figured out a way to get him downstairs to the main lobby to play the piano one more time. And after that, he started to improve because it was something he was passionate about. And we opened the avenue for him to do that. And by that, I saw his demeanor change, and he began to get better to the point when he got out of the hospital. We had dinner together or lunch together 3 or 4 times after that, because he was better and doing well, because we had nurturers and people around him, and we got him to do something that he really enjoyed doing. So those are different variables. But I would say outside of healthcare, I think you have to be careful about who you surround yourself with. If you have people inserting negative things all the way in your life, you'll feel devalued, you'll lose hope, you won't have strength. But you've got to tap into different things. I rejuvenate myself through motivational speeches, or I listen to YouTube videos that I know are encouraging to me, or I study work, personal development that I know is encouraging, where I can change my mindset and take control of it. Or just like we're doing today, I believe we're encouraging people today that when this comes out, somebody's going to watch it and say, yeah, she's speaking to me or he's speaking to me. So these are the things that we have to surround ourselves with a positive environment, because it will work on our mindset and feed positive into our mind, versus if we feed ourselves with negative, we're going to lose hope and lose sight of what we're supposed to be doing.
Do you think that everybody needs to find the people who will say the equivalent of pick up your mat and walk?
I think it's important. Now, I also think it's important that we find people that maybe don't always agree with us, right? So that people can realize that we're going down different avenues that maybe we shouldn't be, and that could be the same network of people, quite honestly, because it's transparency around us, right? Not people that are always putting us down or you'll never do this or whatever, but it's people that believe in us, that people are like minded. And Napoleon Hill, I'll just throw that name in again, he calls it a mastermind of people that yet you can actually have good dialogue at the table about maybe this isn't the direction we should be going, but it's still like-minded people with the same values that we have. And that's where I want to stress that. So my wife is a wonderful example of that. She has the same values that I have, but she doesn't always agree with me. And that's okay, because it helps me see from a different perspective. But I know when I need encouragement, I have a great helpmate to provide that for me. When I know that I'm in a little bit of a slump, I've got a great helpmate that recognizes that and helps me along. So she essentially is that person that says, take up your mat and walk, because we're like-minded. So that's where I would stress more, is being like-minded, people around you that have the same values and morals that you do. So they'll even be honest with you, and it may not be the feedback you want, but they'll give you feedback to say, this is where I see you're headed, without degrading who you are and your values. So I think it probably catapults off of that to say you've got to have like-minded people around you that are just open and honest.
Definitely. Winding up, how can people continue learning from you? I know you are serving a church and you are serving your hospital world, or your nursing world, but I know you are motivating people so much and this talk has been so powerful. So I'm curious, how can people connect with you beyond listening to this episode?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'm on the social media channels. So if you'll look up Jeff Radford or Dr. Jeff Radford, YouTube, Instagram, also Facebook, and TikTok. I'm actually on TikTok, so I'm learning TikTok a little bit. I'm putting social media content out all the time. It's about leadership content. If you go to drjeffradford.com, you'll see my website. There's ways to connect with me there as well. I have a book called Mercy Leader. If I could just hold it up and just let the people know, this is where I drive a lot of my own leadership values, try to practice them, try to continue to develop. So that's on Amazon. So that's ways to kind of know some insight of how I lead as a leader that I think is very positive in organizations. So, and then if you get on my website and shoot me some contact information, I'd love to interact with you or send me a direct message on social media. I'm the one that responds to that. Nobody else responds. It's me. So send me a message and I'd love to interact with you. And if there's any way I can encourage you, please let me know.
Dr. Jeff Radford, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for the work you're doing as well.
I appreciate that so much. Thanks.